Good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Loza, and I'm the current Vice President of NTNA. Welcome to the third Tempe City Candidate Forum co-hosted by the League of Women Voters and North Tempe Neighborhood Association. I want to thank the City of Tempe for the use of this wonderful venue for this forum. A big thank you to Elizabeth Higgins, Chief of Staff, City Clerk Brigida Kuiper, City Hall Security, and all the Tempe City staff who have assisted in making this event possible. Thank you to Greg Wolf from Channel 11 for videotaping the forum so all the Tempe voters unable to attend will have the opportunity to know their candidates for City Council a little bit better. Thank you to our partners from the League of Women Voters, co-presidents Robin Prudhomme Bauer and Alice Stambaugh. Thank you to Marge Thornton, Cindy Hans, Barbara England, Sheila Motomatsu, Sue Elcock, and Care Lengel. Thank you to the North Tempe Neighborhood Association members, Barbara Sherman, a member of both the League of Women Voters and NTNA, who herself has served on the council and kept us on point. Darlene Justice, the former president of NTNA for her council, Shannon Dutton, Rita Collin, Deb Sajak, and Allison Starr. And thank you to Deb Gain-Braley, our current president of NTNA, who is here in spirit, but unfortunately is absent due to family health issues. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Alice Stambaugh from the League of Women Voters. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Break it, you buy it.
I would like now to introduce our moderator, Robin Prudhomme Bauer from the League of Women Voters.
Thank you very much, Kim. And thank you for the League and the North Tempe Neighborhood Association for inviting me to come. I don't live here in the Metro Phoenix area. I'm here from Clarkdale, Arizona, which is up in the Verde Valley. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. This forum is, as was said before, is co-hosted by the League of Women Voters, Metro Phoenix, and the North Tempe Neighborhood Association, and we're pleased that it's going to be shown on Tempe's Channel 11. First of all, just a reminder, I think it said when you came in, but please turn your cell phones to mute or off. That would be much appreciated. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that believes that every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate in our democracy. So the purpose of this forum is to inform and educate ourselves about the 3 charter amendments and the candidates running for the 3 seats on the Tempe City Council on the March 13th special and primary election. The election is an all-mail-in election, and ballots are being mailed after February 14th, so expect them sometime late next week. We will have 5 parts, basically, of this forum. We'll have a presentation by the city clerk on how the mail-in ballots will happen, and a little information on the 3 charter amendments. Then we will have opening statements from each of the candidates, and they will tell us about themselves and why they want to serve all of Tempe on the city council. Then there are 2 questions that will be presented to the candidates from the co-sponsoring organizations, and the candidates will have some time to answer them. Then we get to questions from you, the audience. I think you have been given a note card to write your question to the candidates. It just makes it easier for us since we are being televised. And lastly, we'll conclude the forum with final statements from the candidates. We will conclude promptly at 9 p.m., so we will not be going over time. Let me first of all, before I go into get us started, I want to tell us about our timekeepers. We have two timekeepers tonight, Shannon Detton and Marge Thornton. Can you both raise your hands so people see who you are? Now, you know who really runs the show is the timekeeper. So, yes, they have all the power in the room. We have people who are picking up your note cards. Can you wave your hands for me? Over there, if you have a question, just find one of them. They'll be walking up and down the room, and they'll be able to pick up your question for us to organize and sort so that we have an easy flowing kind of forum tonight. We have a group of women. Can you raise your hands in the back, please, who are sorting the questions for me? It just makes my job a little bit easier. I'd like to go over a few of the guidelines for this evening, and this is just to make sure we're all on the same page. My role is to manage this forum fairly for all the participants and the audience. The order of speaking by the participants have been determined ahead of time, and I will manage that one. The candidates are to be respectful of each other's points of view, speak their mind freely, but do not engage in any personal attacks. Civility is the word for the evening. The audience, all of you, are asked to refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for the candidates and their comments. Remember, we want to hear everybody's points of view. Written questions from the audience, as I said, will be handed to the runners. They will be sorted by topic, then handed to me. I will present the questions then to the candidates. Duplicate or similar questions will be bundled together into one question so that we can cover as many topics as possible as the time allows this evening. And remember, candidates' time limits will be strictly observed. So when that stop sign goes up, please conclude your sentence right away. Now, with that, I'd like to introduce the Tempe Town Clerk, Brigida Cooper, who will spend about 5 minutes, 5 minutes presenting information about the mail-in ballot for this election and information on the 3 charter members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I need to stand here so my voice projects in the microphone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brigida Kuiper, and I'm the city clerk. And one of my responsibilities as city clerk is to administer the City of Tempe elections. And so first of all, I'd like to thank the NTNA and the League of Women Voters for asking me to speak a little bit about our ballot by mail election, because this is something a little new for us. But before I start, I need to read a really quick disclaimer that as a staff person, we read before any type of election issues are discussed. So the City of Tempe and its employees are governed by Arizona law that prohibits the use of city resources to influence an election. Nothing in my presentation or in my materials are or should be construed as an attempt to influence the result of the election, and they are provided solely for informational purposes. So, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the March 13th election, and as our little handout flyer says, this will be the city's first ballot by mail election. So we're pretty excited about that. Council made the decision to have a ballot by mail election after receiving public input at 2 separate forums. We also had the online forum where the public submitted comments. We had 2 work study sessions where council discussed it. And based on the information that was presented, they determined that they would like to move forward with a ballot by mail election. Because in Tempe, in our last city election, 94% of our voters voted a mail ballot. Only 6% went to the polls. So as you can see, the majority of our voters are voting a mail ballot. In addition to that, for those that are Tempe residents, you may have noticed in November of 17, both Tempe Union High School District and Kyrene High School District had ballot by mail elections only. So although this is new to the city of Tempe, it's really not new to our voters. But we're really excited about it, and we're doing several different type of outreach, promotional opportunities, talking to groups to make sure they understand how a ballot by mail election works. So if you'll bear with me, let me just speak briefly about that. So in a ballot by mail election, every registered voter will receive a ballot in the mail, and ballots will be mailed beginning on February 14th. I think that's what our flyer says. And if you don't receive your ballot in the mail, or you need a replacement ballot, you lost it, up through March 5th, we would encourage you to contact Maricopa County Elections, and they can mail you a duplicate ballot. After that time, what we would encourage you to do is to go to one of the replacement ballot centers, and you can get a replacement ballot. And at those ballot centers, in addition to a replacement ballot, you can also drop off your voted ballot if you prefer to do that versus putting it in the mail. And then last, you can also vote at a ballot center. So if you really prefer the experience of voting in person, you can go to a ballot center. For our election, we have 5 different ballot centers. 3 of them are manned by Maricopa County Elections, and 2 are in Phoenix, and 1 is in Mesa in their offices. And then and those open on February 14th, I'm sorry. And then the 2 ballot centers in Tempe, one will be at the library. It's where early voting has always occurred, same place, 2nd floor of the library. And then the second ballot center will be here at City Hall in our lobby in the entrance. And the 2 Tempe ballot centers will open March 3rd. So let's see. So what's on the ballot? That's what you're here for tonight, right? So first of all, we know there are 3 city council seats and there are 6 candidates. We're here, you are here to learn a little bit more about your candidates so that you can make an informed choice on election day. In addition to our 3 city council seats, we have 3 propositions, 3 ballot propositions. And the first is Proposition 402. And this is regarding Papago Preserve. It is a charter amendment, and if it is adopted, what it would do is designate Tempe's portion of Papago Park as a preserve. That's if it's approved by the voters, and it would be part of our charter. The second proposition is Proposition 403, and that is a proposition regarding campaign finance reform. And basically it would require, if it's adopted, it would require disclosure of primary contributions that are made to influence the outcome, sources of primary contributions that are made to influence the outcome of an election. And then the last proposition is Proposition 404, and that's a question, and it's regarding a permanent base expenditure limitation. And that sounds really fancy, but basically what it means is if it's approved, it will allow the city to spend existing revenues. So you can find out more information about our propositions in our pamphlet. Looks like this. We have several on the table back there. These are being mailed this week to all households, so look for them in the next couple of days. We're mailing about 50,000, so I don't think they all get mailed the same day. So look for this. You'll find information about your propositions in here. You'll find the exact ballot language, and then anybody that has submitted a statement for or against a ballot proposition will be in, their information will be in here. In addition to reading this, staff is also, we have developed, we're going to hold an informational session on Monday, February 12th at 6 o'clock at the library, where staff will be in attendance to briefly go over these 3 propositions and then answer any questions that the audience may have. So that'll be more of a give and take on, you know, what these really mean and what they mean to the city. Very quickly, the first two propositions are charter amendments. So if they are approved by the voters in Tempe, the next step is we do submit them to the governor for signature, and they actually don't go into effect until we get the governor's signature. So even if they're adopted on March 13th, they would not be effective March 13th. They would be effective sometime thereafter. So a couple of really important dates before I close. First of all is February 12th. Not only are we having the informational forum at the library, but that's the deadline for voter registration. So if you're not registered to vote, you can go online to servicearizona.com and you can register to vote before midnight. Or if you need to change your voter registration, you can do that as well. The informational forum, and then on February 14th, that's when the ballots will be mailed. So you can start looking for them after the 14th. In the back, my office, we've placed some resources for you. We have a couple of flyers. It talks a little bit about a ballot by mail election, some important dates. We just encourage you to grab whatever you would like back there. But I would like to bring your attention to this flyer. This is a flyer that we put out, the City of Tempe and Maricopa County elections, specific to ours. And it's kind of a checklist. And so what do you do first in a vote by mail, a ballot by mail election? Check your mail for the yellow envelope. So all the ballots come out in a yellow envelope, so don't throw that away. But if you do, you could get a duplicate. So, and this kind of gives you a little checklist. Ballots have to be received either by Maricopa County elections or at a ballot center by 7 p.m. on election day, March 13th. So they have to be received, not postmarked. We encourage you to mail them no later than March 7th to allow for time to make it to Maricopa County elections. After then, we do recommend that you drop it off at a ballot center, and that information can be found on this flyer. Some other things that can be found on this flyer that's something that Maricopa County Elections is doing is you can sign up online, email, or text message to see what the status of your ballot is. And I've done it, and I've already gotten 2 texts from them. And one says, "Hello, Brigida, did you know that the election is March 13th? That's nice. And the next one was, "Hello, Brigida, we are going to start mailing ballots on February 14th. So it's kind of a neat thing. If you're tech savvy and want that, you can either text message or email. You can sign up. It will tell you when the ballots are mailed. You will get a text when your ballot has been returned to the county. So if you're a little nervous about mail, you see when it's been returned. You'll also get another text or email notification when it's been, your signature has been verified and it's good to count. So that information is on here, so I would encourage you to take a look at that. And I don't know if I went over my 5 minutes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you are.
So with that, I've kind of crammed a lot of information about ballot by mail election, but I think it's really important. It's important that we go out and vote, and our election is a little bit different. It will be by mail, so I would just encourage you to avail yourself of the resources. If you're interested in the propositions, we will have that informational session. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Can I take questions? I'm sorry. No?
1 or 2, we are very
Okay.
much on time frame now,
Okay.
so
I apologize then. Okay?
that's okay. Yes,
Okay, yes.
please.
You mentioned the ballot centers, are those where the polling places really are?
A ballot center is similar to a polling place, yes, but we'll only have 2 of them. Only 2 in Tempe. 1 at the library and then 1 here at City Hall. Yes, thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brigida, and I believe that if you have any questions, they can contact you at your office around the election or come to the February 12th meeting, that you can find out more information about the charter amendments and anything about the mail-in ballot election. So she's a great resource, and I thank her very much for the information tonight.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's get on with the forum, and I'd like to introduce the 6 candidates that are running for Tempe City Council. We have Jennifer Adams, We have Robin Arredondo Savage. I will get close to this by the end of the night. Sarah Cater, Lauren Kuby, Justin Stewart, and Genevieve Vega. As I said before, the candidates have drawn numbers to determine their order of speaking, and they're going to begin with opening statements, and the candidates get a minute and a half to tell us why they want to represent you for the next few years. And we will begin with Justin Stewart.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justin Stewart. I am the current chair of the Mitchell Park Neighborhood Association. I've been on that board for 5 years, and I've been the chair for the last 2.5. While I'm the chair of the Mitchell Park Neighborhood Association, I got to know my neighbors very well and got to talk to the neighbors and realize that neighbors are really what makes up the fabric of Tempe and what makes Tempe special. From there, I started working with other neighborhood groups. One of those groups are being the Tempe Neighborhoods Together group. And from there, I got to meet and work with other neighborhood advocates and neighborhood chairs from north, south, east, and west Tempe. And it was an eye-opening experience to realize how many things in common we had with each other. There is no North Tempe and South Tempe, but there's just neighbors. And I really want to make sure that we can bring that all together and make sure we all have a common voice and a common goal. Everyone thinks that there's differences, and you know, I've talked to a lot of neighbors and a lot of neighborhood leaders, and we're about on the same boat with a lot of things, and we need to like move past that. So I want to help bring that together. I'd also like to bring forward the idea of a village planning committee that's similar to what the city of Mesa and Phoenix has in order to empower the neighbors with development ideas. This would be a first stop and the first step in the development process that a developer would have to go to, and it'd be a neighborhood decision to listen to what the developer had to say before going to the Development Review Commission. I think this would be a great opportunity to make sure that the neighbors have the power together.
Thank you very much, Justin. See the power of the stop sign. Our next candidate is Lauren Kuby.
Yes, so I'm current council member, and I also manage community engagement for the Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability. And isn't it a relief to live in Tempe when we think of the troubling times that we're undergoing in national government and our state government? But Tempe, we're a compassionate place, we're an innovative place. We work together to make lives better for our residents. I'm really proud of the work I've done on council, and among those areas I've focused on have been sustainable solutions for the community. We're looking at a 100% renewable energy goal for the city, and we're creating an urban forest master plan, doubling our shade. And then there's working families with Working Families initiatives who worked on Earned Sick Day, an initiative that started in Tempe and then went statewide, and a free pre-K program, and the best equal pay program in the state, because in the country, because it's fair that women who work the same jobs as a man get paid the same as a man. And fundamentally, I've also worked on campaign finance reform and trying to rid politics and our government of the corruptive influence of money. And we now have an online searchable database for our campaign donations. As candidates are required to report lobbyist donations that hadn't happened before. We've reduced the amount of money that you can put into a campaign. And now we have a ballot initiative that's coming before you. It will be the first such law that will require dark money groups to reveal their original source donors. So I'm a woman that gets stuff done. I love serving on the council. There's no more exciting place to be than in city government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next candidate is Robin Arredondo Savage.
Hello, everybody. I'm Robin Arredondo Savage.
Arredondo.
I am the current vice mayor here in the city of Tempe, and I appreciate you all coming out here tonight. I am a native and a fourth-generation Tempean, and this community has been so instrumental to my family, and I had a remarkable childhood growing up here in the city of Tempe. I went to all of my neighborhood schools. I graduated from McClintock High School. Maybe there's some other Chargers in the room. And then after high school, I joined the United States Army. I was very proud to be able to serve our country and then to come home and join our family business that has been located in the city of Tempe and operating in the city of Tempe for over 30 years. I was able to get really involved in the community with various boards and commissions and to use my GI Bill to go back to school and graduate from Mesa Community College and Arizona State University and start my family. and also to serve on the Tempe Union High School District Governing Board for 2 terms, where it was very rewarding to work with our students and our families to make sure that they were successful in school, and then be elected to the Tempe City Council. It was been wonderful for me to be able to bring all those different experiences and those passions and do a lot of collaboration type efforts to really make a difference in the city of Tempe. And I appreciate you guys being here. I look forward to the conversation, and I hope to be able to continue to serve our residents of Tempe.
Thank you very much. Our next candidate is Sarah Cater.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you all for being here tonight. I am a native of Tempe also. Grew up southern and rural, went to Tempe Public Schools. I also went to McClintock High School. Once a Charger, always a Charger. And I went to the University of Arizona for college and Syracuse University for law school. My husband and I actually bought the house next door to my parents. We call it the Cater Compound. And we are now raising our daughter, who will be 2 in April, in Tempe. So we're growing our family here in Tempe. After I came back, after law school, Syracuse was very cold. So I decided to come back to Tempe and start my career. I work at a nonprofit organization called the Arizona Center for Disability Law. We provide free legal services to people with disabilities, most of whom are living in poverty. And I have the real privilege of representing these families and helping mostly children with autism and children with other disabilities thrive in the community and get the services that they need. And being committed to my hometown, when I learned that the poverty rate in Tempe is over 20%, I felt that the City Council, while doing many amazing things, could really use a champion for working families. And so that's why I'm running, and I hope to be able to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Genevieve Vega.
Yes, hello. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Genevieve Vega. I'm running to be your next Tempe City Council member as a continuation of my service to the city of Tempe. I'm currently on the Tempe Community Council Board of Directors, and we work on human services in Tempe. So we work with the working poor and homeless issues, at-risk youth and seniors, and domestic violence survivors. You may have also seen me, since the League of Women Voters is here, I've been such a passionate advocate for voting rights, testifying in the redistricting process in 2010. I've registered countless voters. I've trained other people on how to register voters, because at the end of the day, that's how we advance our democracy. So, so this is really an important issue to me, but I also, have a head for business. So I'm a 2-time Sun Devil, recently earning my executive MBA at Arizona State and the W.P. Carey School, and I have my own business. I help businesses with their growth challenges, whether they're growing so fast they need structure and process around how to manage their business, or maybe their growth is declining a little and they need some employee development to get them started or get them going again. So again, head for business, but my heart really is in the community. Tempe is the place my husband Dave and I chose to raise our family. I have a freshman at McClintock and a special needs 2nd grader, which is really why I decided to run, to bring that perspective of a working family who knows what it's like to raise a special needs child in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our final candidate is Jennifer Adams.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jennifer Adams, and I'm running for Tempe City Council. First of all, thanks to the audience for being here and all those watching on TV. I was born and raised in Nebraska, so I'm not a Charger, but I was raised there and actually went to the University of Nebraska and graduated there in 1987. And I was on the University of Nebraska golf team, where I learned to be very disciplined at a young age. And I was also academic All-American. I grew up around politics. My father was the mayor of my hometown, and I learned the value of community service at a young age. I moved to Tempe in 1987, where I earned my master's degree in social work from ASU. I have 29 years of service at the city of Tempe in a variety of departments, so I have a global perspective of the city of Tempe. I'm passionate about Tempe. It's a great city. It has great city workers, and I know we can do even better. I'm retired now, so I can spend all of my time dedicated to you, the residents of Tempe. I have the time, the energy, and the knowledge to make good decisions and help the residents out for the city. I look forward to your questions tonight. If you have any other questions for me that I don't answer tonight, please go to my website at adamsfortempe.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. Our next two questions are the ones that are coming from the co-sponsoring organizations. And we will begin with, excuse me here, thanks so much. We will begin with the question that has been put together by the North Tempe Neighborhood Association. Our Sonoran Desert ecosystem is fragile and irreplaceable. The Papago Park Preserve will continue the desert park activities that we have enjoyed throughout the years, hiking, running, biking, horsebacking, etc. Respectfully using the already well-established trails, we can guard these special desert acres for our children and grandchildren. Proper management of the Papago Park Preserve is critical. In the past, we have seen significant damage done to the desert on numerous occasions. Examples have been excessive or destructive pruning, planting of non-native species, and haphazard development. The North Tempe Neighborhood Association supports certified trained staff with desert ecosystem expertise and adequate oversight to prevent inadvertent destruction of our special Sonoran Desert. Staff also need urban park management skills to oversee desert maintenance and conservation, as well as management of special activities and collaboration with other entities and parks. We even suggest a desert naturalist urban park manager oversee the Papago Park Preserve. The questions, and they both can be answered together. Do you support Tempe's Papago Park Preserve Charter Amendment? And also, do you agree or do you see the need for a certified desert naturalist urban park manager for the preserve? And we will begin with Lauren Kuby.
Yes, indeed, I support it.
1 minute, excuse me, 1 minute.
Yes, indeed, I do support it, and I submitted a pro-ballot initiative, co-authored one, so you can read in detail about my position. And I was so proud to work with many of the folks in this room on that ballot initiative. And I remember that night where Darlene Justice presented the 1,100 signatures that she collected from folks in the park. And this is something that's very much needed. We only have one preserve in Tempe. It's a mountain. We know that preserve is a little bit lacking in care, and our desert preserve is incredibly fragile. There's been a lot of use there that will be maintained, historic use. I think we should have the horses back, and we should find a company that would be willing to do that. But it's a treasured icon of the past, but it's such a valued resource for the future. So we need to put resources towards it, and the very first step is to create a Papago Park Preserve. We can bring all of our attention to bear upon this resource. I'm in favor of an urban park manager, with the exception, I think we're going to have, I hope, an urban forester for the city of Tempe who will oversee all the trees in Tempe, and that should be a part of the mix as well.
Thank you. Robin.
It got cut. My whole name got cut off. I like it, Robin. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I first want to give a shout out to all the residents, especially the groups from NTNA that really worked hard to bring this to the council's attention, and something that they really wanted, and got the majority of the residents around the Papago Preserve and even outside of that area to really understand what a jewel the park is. And I think anybody that lives in Tempe realizes that we don't have a lot of open space very much anymore. And I think when we do have opportunities like this, we need to be able to capture them. So I want to say thank you to those individuals that worked really hard, like Lauren mentioned, to bring this to our attention and have always been a guardian of Papago Park. You guys have done phenomenal work, and it's really greatly appreciated. I think if this initiative passes, what it will do will not only create another layer of protection for the park, but for the years to come and the councils that may come after these councils. I think it's really important that we give the power to the people so they have some decision-making of what will happen there in the future. I also think it would be great to have some type of a staff certification. And I know obviously times are a little bit tough in the city, and to bring on new staff sometimes can be complicated, but this is a really great opportunity to partner and collaborate with some other organizations or maybe even our university to be able to get that done.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, I absolutely support this proposition. I think of all cities in the valley, Tempe understands the importance of preserving our history, and I think the Papago Preserve is part of that. I think also, as was mentioned, I think one of the most important things that the council and voters in the city can do is learn from our mistakes. And so we know if we haven't been preserving appropriately, let's do something to change that for the future and for future generations. So I think this is an excellent proposition to bring forward. And I definitely support an urban park manager. We need someone knowledgeable with expertise to be able to handle these issues and figure out solutions.
Thank you. Genevieve?
Yes, I am also in favor of the Papago Park Preserve, and in fact also submitted a co-authored letter of support in your publicity pamphlet. I'm also in favor of having a certification for a desert ecosystem. We must protect and preserve our natural spaces. And this is something I think that's worth investment, and something that we should do in partnership, I think, with Phoenix, because this is Papago Preserve is acreage that we share with the city of Phoenix, and so I think this is an important collaboration that we should do. And certainly that space is one that I have brought, well, I should say we, my husband and I have brought our children to, and it's important for me to see that this is a preserve that lasts throughout the generations.
Thank you, Genevieve. Jennifer?
Yes, thank you. I'm very supportive of this amendment. It's very important. I worked in public works for many years, for 14 years, and one of our roles that I helped oversee was parks and golf courses, and Papago Park was always in the mix on that. It's a gorgeous gem in the desert, and we need to preserve it. I also am in favor of a certified manager for the park, just dedicated to the park. I think it's easy to get sidetracked if you have too many responsibilities, and this is a beautiful area, and it deserves having good representation and someone that we can go to, one-stop shop for somebody we can go to and talk to if we have concerns about the park.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, as an avid, I like to go hiking, I like to be outdoors, I like to go camping, so I obviously support this. Even my wife, she's a wildlife biologist, so this hits pretty close to home for me. So I absolutely support this initiative and this charter amendment and this addition to the charter, and I thank you, all the neighbors, for bringing this forward. As for a professional, certified professional to manage the preserve, I feel like that's the only way you can actually properly do this. Like I said, I hear this day in, day out from listening to my wife and what she does at work, and it's the professionals that have gone to school and that have taken the classes and they've gotten their degrees that understand and truly understand how to take care of such a fragile habitat. And we need to make sure that we have the best for that habitat to make sure it stays that way for the next 50, 60, 100 years and keep it away from commercialization and development. And I think that's the only way to do it, is to get a true manager in there with the certification.
Thank you. Our next question is a question from the League of Women Voters, Metro Phoenix. And the question reads, or comments before the question is, political candidates and PACs that receive contributions or spend money are required to present, are required at present to file periodic financial disclosure reports. The good news is that this data is publicly available. However, the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision changes the disclosure process by allowing nonprofit corporations whose donors' identities are protected from disclosure to do independent campaign advertising. The city of Tempe is addressing the Citizens United's nonprofit loophole. The current mayor and council have referred a contribution source disclosure charter amendment to the voters for the March election. The charter amendment requires all major contributions be reported and defines a major contribution as $1,000 or more. What are your views or view of this charter amendment or this issue in general? So let's begin with Robin.
Okay, Robin, thank you very much. I will say this was actually something that had it was, I believe, an extension of our campaign finance reform efforts and the things that we've been doing, trying to create more transparency. We talk about lowering the limits of individual contributions, of PAC contributions, and also the inclusion of the lobbyist checklist. So a lot of things have really transpired. It has been overly supported by the city of our residents. And I think this is just another piece, another step to be able to do that, to be able to curb dark money. When I'm out talking to residents in the community, they are very excited that they're going to be able to have the opportunity to vote on this. And we encourage everybody to get out there and tell us what they think. I don't really believe that there's been a significant issue in the city of Tempe, but I think everybody does know that dark money has played a role, sometimes fairly negatively, in elections, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen in Tempe. So this is a great opportunity, and one that I truly support, to be able to let the residents of Tempe tell us what they think.
Thank you, Robin. Sarah?
Yeah, I absolutely support this. I think this is so important. I think transparency in government is probably maybe the most important thing you can have. The voters and residents of Tempe need to know what's going on with the council and where the money came from, and I think it is a part of this process. Now running for office, you see that it's a part of the process, and I think we need to know who's giving money to who, and then who stands before council and how members vote. The public has a right to know. That's just the bottom line. So I absolutely support this. I think more transparency is always better.
Genevieve?
Yes, well, my preference would be to see Citizens United overturned, but absent that, yes, I'm in favor of this charter amendment to reveal your original source donors. We, as candidates, have to reveal who our contributions are from, where they work, what their job is, if they're a lobbyist for the city, and I think this is an important part of that transparency process. And I agree with Sarah about transparency being one of the most important things we can do as elected officials, as government. And so I would absolutely be in favor of this and look forward to I'll remind everyone, don't forget to vote all the way down your ballot. There are 3 propositions and 3 seats for city council. I think this is an important thing to remind everybody as much as we can.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, I'm supportive of the ballot initiative, and I think it's important that we have transparency in our government. The undisclosed political spending is meant to influence elected officials, which is a problem. It's used to buy attack ads, send misleading messages to the community, and they also even make phone calls to try to confuse voters. Some of my fellow candidates have taken large contributions from unions, and I have not. I think it's important to really be careful about taking those large union donations when you're making decisions on their pay and benefits. Personally, I'm in favor of all elections being publicly funded. Our team is working with Terry Goddard's initiative to pass a constitutional amendment to outlaw dirty money. I'm wearing my Outlaw Dirty Money button tonight, and we need 300 signatures, and we do have signatures to be signed in the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
I'm a big fan. I'm for the amendment. I'm a big fan of transparency in government and clean elections in general, and just making sure that everyone has a relatively fair chance to run and get out there and help the community and do their service. With that being said, Tempe has to look out for what's best for Tempe. Sometimes there's a lot of fear. We're scared to we hide behind things. We're scared to take initiatives. And it's time for Tempe to take some bold steps with things. And I think this is a great opportunity for the voters to say, Citizens United happened, but we want to stand up and find a way to help ourselves and help what's good for the city and keep our city clean and keep our city away from dirty money and dirty politics and have really good council members. I look around, luckily I think we have 6 great candidates in front of us right now, so I'm not that concerned about it. But with that being said, for future generations and where money might come from, we need to know, we need to take a stand, we have to do what's right for Tempe.
Thank you. Lauren?
It's important for everybody to know that all the candidates here went after and sought endorsements from unions. They represent working people. Some received the endorsements, some didn't. So I would like to say I've led this initiative on the council, and with the support of the mayor and Councilmember Keating, we came up with this ballot initiative and worked with Terry Goddard extensively to put this before the voters. Money is the root of all evil in politics, I believe. But even the Citizens United decision, as dark as it might have been, it left an opening, and the majority opinion said this says nothing about disclosure, and actually called on jurisdictions across the United States to require disclosure, because disclosure is a public right to know. We need to know who's influencing our elections. we're starting to see the insidious creep of dark money influence into our city elections in the state of Arizona. The little town of Prescott saw a $60,000 investment expenditure from dark money groups in this past election cycle. So it's important that Tempe nip that in the bud, that we be the first city in Arizona to require disclosure from these dark money groups. This is one bite of the apple. We've been taking many bites, as Councilmember Arredondo mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for that. I like the level of agreement that goes on here. So hopefully we'll have a little differences as we get into the questions from all of you at the audience that have been passed up to me. We have a number of questions here. If you have a question that that hasn't been asked, go ahead and write it out on a card, and we'll take it to the back of the room, and they'll get it up to me as part of our discussion. We'll have probably almost about an hour before we go to closing statements for questions. So that would be that's going to be really nice time to get some good stuff discussed. So let's begin with our first question. A bill is before the Arizona Senate. It's Senate Bill 1002, allowing small businesses to operate in residential neighborhoods. How can Tempe prevent such an unwanted development? And we will begin with Sarah.
Yeah, this is such an important issue because we know our neighborhoods in Tempe are part of what makes Tempe wonderful. And so we want to make sure, that's why the city has these zoning rules to make sure that neighborhoods stay neighborhoods and other areas with businesses stay that way. The state legislature has some interesting ideas. And I think that we have to be really careful. And part of the problem is when the state limits what the city typically does, it makes it more difficult for the city to do its job. So I think part of that is having a relationship with our state legislators and being able to go there and have a voice and say, this is what the city needs. And we need to be part of that ongoing process. So I think it's really important that these types of bills that city council members have conversations with state legislators about these types of bills that will affect cities and the residents that live there so that we can maintain our neighborhoods.
Genevieve.
Yes, I think this bill is another attempt at the state usurping local control. And so as residents, one of the things you can do is call your legislators and ask them to speak out against this bill. This is something that that we need to be able to have these ordinances in our own cities and handle our own zoning requirements. And this is something that I think we're going to see more and more as we go along, the state legislature interfering within the city of Tempe. So this is something I do again agree with Sarah as far as having a good relationship with our legislative officials. Government entities need to work together. We need to have good relationships. We need to talk to each other. That's not just the legislature, but it's also Congress, and it's also our school boards, and it's all of these organizations to be able to work together and do what's best for our own communities, and be careful that we don't do sweeping state reforms that have deep impacts in our cities.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Yes, our neighborhoods need to be protected. They're a key to our community, to our safety. And I know that there's a house in South Tempe that they're referring to, I believe, that has basically been turned into a hotel. It's my understanding they even took the kitchen out so they could have another room for a hotel. Well, that's not an Airbnb, that's a hotel, and the state has passed a law that they can do that, but that's not okay for the city of Tempe. That's not reasonable to our communities. They're having beer parties and throwing bottles over at the neighbors' fences, and it's just out of control. So we need to really work with our legislatures to change this law and maybe have one person dedicated to just focusing on this so we can change this and control our environment, our neighborhoods, which are precious to our very well-being.
Thank you. Justin.
First of all, for the past 2 weeks, we've seen, at least as a neighborhood leader, I've gotten a lot of emails, and I've been passing them out to people on my emailing list. I want to applaud the mayor, who's taken a bold stand against these bills that are going through right now, and it's very, very refreshing to see strong lobbying coming from Tempe City Council, and it makes me very happy, like the understanding right now of how important to stall or stop these bills are. So right off the bat, I just wanted to applaud Mayor Mitchell for the efforts that he's taken for this. I think it comes down to communication from your neighborhood association, neighborhood association groups such as NTNA or TNT that can get neighbors involved to call their legislators at state level when we get this information from a council member or mayor that these issues are coming down the pipe, and take those initiatives to get involved and make your complaints to the state. It's all about local control.
Stop sign.
You did pretty good. You did pretty good. You're allowed to finish your statement.
He saw that stop sign. That was it. He wasn't going to run it.
Lauren.
So there's also a House bill, and these bills are existential threats to our neighborhoods and also threats to the right of cities to zone. And we're seeing this bill not just in Arizona, but across the country. Cities have historically been able to separate neighborhoods and single-family residences from businesses, and this is a direct attack on that. And local governments, local city councils best reflect the values of the residents, not the state legislature. So it's really important to push back, and it's not just about getting the grassroots involved and getting neighbors involved. It's not just about appealing to our delegation. There's 6 of them that we should have them carry this mission forward. But it's also reaching out to the other cities and towns, the other 90 cities and towns in Tempe, in Arizona, and the Arizona League of Cities. We have to be united, but ultimately we have to be considering a lawsuit, because I think this bill is going to pass. It seems to be real heft behind it. It seems like the governor might be behind it. We have to be willing to protect our neighborhoods and protect our cities.
Thank you. Robin.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is an attack on 2 things. Our neighborhoods, our quality of life, and local control. And so it's really important. I'm really glad that Justin mentioned the outreach that the council has been doing. And we've been trying to be a little bit more active earlier so we can get people to be more engaged in the process. We want our legislators to know the impact that whatever it is, decisions that they're making there are going to impact our residents and our quality of life. So not only is it important that we have great relationships with our legislators, that we inform our residents, but that we also, like Lauren mentioned, have really good relationships with our sister cities, and that we work together to even have a larger voice and have an impact early on in the decisions. One of the other things that we're actually doing as a council too is trying to find out, just in case it does pass, what is the plan B? What can we do locally? Is there anything we can do with permitting in the sense of what's happening in the city so we can prevent things like this from happening in the future? It's very important that we cover all of our bases and do what we can to make sure that we have the best quality of life in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Our next question. Do you think reducing taxes on businesses coming to Tempe is advantageous to us all? Is this response sustainable? And another part to this question, what does sustainable mean to you? And with that, I will give you a minute and a half to answer that, and we'll start with Genevieve.
Sure. I think what we're talking about is, I don't know if it's business taxes so much as reducing taxes on developments happening in Tempe. I'm not sure.
Businesses are reducing their tax burden for coming here too.
Here and building buildings. That's what we tend to be hearing more about with this question. So I think this is something that has to be done on a case-by-case basis. It's a tool that's not just cities, but also the state has used quite a lot to attract businesses, large businesses, small businesses to locate here. I would actually be more in favor of reducing taxes for small local businesses and improving the processes for how local businesses can apply for permits and operate in the city of Tempe. I'd much rather put our focus on the local business model. And then just, again, case-by-case situation for some of the larger developments that we see happening. Because in some instances, I think, like Tempe Marketplace, like the Omni, those are some very large projects that might not have happened if there wasn't an incentive. So it takes a very pragmatic, thoughtful leader to be able to look at some of these opportunities and not just approach it with a tax break first, but use that kind of as a last resort in the negotiation process.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, I think it depends on what the business is. Is it something that Tempe really needs? And that's the only way we can get them here is to have some tax incentives for them. But we have to be really careful, and I agree that it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. I don't want it to be the property owners around the city at their expense. I don't want them to have to pay extra for these big businesses coming in. So it has to be a real balanced approach, and it depends on what the property that wants to be built is, and what the incentives are, and how soon we can get the money back into the city coffers.
Thank you. Justin?
I think it needs to slow down drastically. Right now, Tempe has had the most GIPLETs, or the most GIPLET giveaway in the past decade. Most of those GIPLETs have gone to the properties along Mill, north of University. We don't know how that's going to turn out yet. We see all these developments up right now, and it could be wonderful. We'll know in about 5 or 10 years when people start moving in, but right now everything's slowly being built. And I think we need to slow this down a bit and make sure this is really the direction we want to go in, and make sure that the property developers are paying their proper taxes. We've talked about other things that are gone by the wayside with Tempe, and we talk about the other propositions coming up to raise our base amount and everything. It'd be great if we could get some of these, get some tax relief from these properties and these businesses, and I see taxes coming in, not so much tax relief, but see money coming in instead of giving money out or freezing money. Like I said, I think we need to really be careful about it in the future. Tempe's been mentioned at least 3 times in the last 6 months for different properties being in borderline trouble, not so much trouble, or like at least questionable things in the Arizona Republic, and we just have to be really careful where we're going with this. Obviously, the Tempe Marketplace was a great use. It was a super fun site. It was polluted. That's the only way you're going to get someone to develop there. But a high-value piece of property in downtown Tempe, we have to be very careful with.
Thank you. Lauren?
So Tempe's had the most economic development, I think, of any city in Arizona. Hence, we see this, increased activity with some tax rebates. I find it important to talk about these in a concrete way, because in the case of the Omni, and I think the question alludes to that, this is a piece of dirt that is collecting no taxes for us whatsoever. And if it's an educationally purposed building, we'll get no taxes in the future. So working with ASU, we absorbed about 40% of the project, not the hotel, the conference center. So we're going to give $20 million of tax incentives over a period of years, and in return we get $32 million a year of economic development, of economic benefit, $400,000 a year with promotion money for Tempe tourism. The arts tax is paid, the transit tax is paid, and this is, when you have a business, we have 1,000 conference goers, they're spreading their business all across the city. So that's where the $32 million of economic empowerment come from. So it's important not to talk in generalities, but specifics. And if we just built educationally purposed buildings, if ASU did that, we would receive no income at all. And so this is a responsible use of, I think, our tax dollars in the future. It's performance-based. And keep in mind that those buildings are going to be built by people who are involved with apprenticeship programs, by the trades. We're going to be developing a workforce economy and a route to the middle class for workers. That was an important part of this agreement. I'm proud to have led that aspect of the agreement.
Thank you. Robin?
Well, I think what I would say first, I want to thank the councils that came before us and the residents for their work and their support to be able to put us in a really good position to have outstanding economic development in the city of Tempe. And I think we're leaders when it comes to economic development. I would say this, when it comes to tools to be able to encourage different businesses to come here, it is limited. We do not have a lot of tools to be able to do the things that we would like to do. But there are things that we want in our community, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's more downtown parking, whether it's a conference center. Those are the things that we value, and we are willing to work with them and to create a type of incentive that I think is a solid return on investment. It has to be a solid return on the investment for us to do that, and it needs to be a case-by-case basis. When you have a parking lot that is generating minimal tax base, and then to be able to bring in something that's going to generate about a $5 million tax base for years to come, that's something that we need to consider and take very, very seriously. As it comes to the Omni, the conference center, to be able to generate $32 million of revenue a year outside of just being in that conference center and being able to support all those businesses in the downtown area, to me, that is a solid return on investment. When you look at the marketplace, that never would have happened if it wasn't for us being able to be creative and encourage them to build there. Same with the Arizona Mills Mall. So a lot of really good things have been done. I think we need to be very selective and make sure that it is a really good return on investment in what the community wants and is synergistic with what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm running to put Tempe families first, and so I think we have to, as others have said, just evaluate each of these case by case. I think when we know that the poverty rate in Tempe is over 20% and we're giving tax breaks to out-of-state developers, that's something that I really wrestle and struggle with. And the question, I believe, was reducing taxes on businesses coming to Tempe. There are a lot of businesses in Tempe. There are a lot of local businesses in Tempe that are struggling. And so I would like to see the focus shift to helping the local businesses and the families that are here now succeed. That's why I'm running to have that be the main focus. Of course, we know in the 2040 general plan that we wanted to make Tempe a hub, sort of a destination, and it really has become that. And that does improve property value, and there's a lot of benefit to having Tempe be that kind of place. But I think it has happened really quickly, and I think we just need to really slowly evaluate where we are and shift the focus back to Tempe families.
Thank you. Our next question deals with our current refugees who are here and how Tempe is welcoming of them. Where do you stand on temporary protective status for current refugees in Tempe and Arizona who are victims of torture, natural disaster, narco-traffic criminals in their home countries? TPS resolution was passed by Congress in 1990, but was ended by President Trump this year, leading some state and local governments to step in to fill the gap. So let's go back to the question, is where do you stand on temporary protective status, which is TPS, and I'll add to that, what actions are you taking to make the city of Tempe more welcoming for refugees? 1 minute. And we will begin with Jennifer.
I get to start this one out, huh? All right, great. Thank you. So the refugees, I think that we need to help one another. I'm a social worker by training, licensed clinical social worker, and I spent my life dedicated to helping others. And the refugees are no exception to that. I think that we need to work, though, with the states and the national government for what their leads are on it and not take matters into our own hands, because I think that can be a slippery slope and it can lead to lawsuits. And I know that the City of Tempe attorneys have spent a lot of time on different lawsuits and protecting the city from this and that, and I just don't want us to go down that slippery slope with another issue like this. Thank you.
Justin.
I think we have to have temporary preservative service. I think we need to be inclusive. I think Tempe needs to welcome the people that are struggling throughout the world, because right now we're having an issue with the federal government welcoming them. And I think we need to, as a city, be as open as possible as we can to let others come in. I think we need to take bold initiatives and stick our neck out a little bit and to do things that maybe might be a little on the line of being controversial, but like doing what's right. It's about what's being right with other human beings. You know, to take it even one step further and look at some things that were talked about in the past year during our current federal administration, you know, I would have liked to have seen Tempe take a bolder stance and even become a sanctuary city when we were talking about the immigration reforms. I just think we have to be inclusive and do what is right for people. and help people and help everyone that we can.
Lauren?
So unfortunately, because of SB 1070, we are hamstrung and cannot declare ourselves a sanctuary city as much as we might like to. But that one of the element of that law has been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. We are a welcoming, inclusive city. We worked with our Human Relations Commission. We have posters up and signs because we want to make sure people know, regardless of their immigration status, their sexuality, their gender, anything about, we are welcoming of all of our residents. And with the TP status, I'm not exactly sure of where that relates, and since the federal government confers immigration status, we may have some issues there. I know that refugee populations have been sharply reduced under the Trump administration. One of the reasons I introduced the No Border Wall resolution, which didn't succeed, it failed by a 4-3 vote, was because the wall is actually going to set up deportation forces, private prisons, and will greatly impact immigrant families, even in Tempe, because many of us know families who are in the shadows in Tempe who have family members who are impacted. So it's important that cities stand up when they can against federal policies.
Thank you. Robin?
Robin. You know what, I would say that the city of Tempe, the one thing that I love about the city of Tempe is we are a very diverse community, and we are very inclusive, and we celebrate that on a daily basis. I think we work very hard to make sure that everybody feels welcome in the city of Tempe. We put our money where our mouth is, and we make sure that there are resources and services available for all Tempeans, regardless of what their needs may be. I think that we now have a Tempe Welcomes All campaign that I think has been received very well, as you may see a lot of those signs, not only in the city businesses, in the city offices, but in businesses around the city. I think we just recently did the Unity Walk, and I'm sure many of you were there. But the city of Tempe does a lot of things right, and one of the things that I think we get right is the ability to include everybody and to be able to make sure that we are providing services and resources for all of those that are in need.
Thank you. Sarah?
My dad was a refugee to this country. He was brought here as an infant child after the Holocaust. So this question really hits close to my heart. And you know, refugees are in an even more narrow category than immigrants. They're fleeing persecution. They're trying to save their lives. And so, yeah, I think we have, Tempe is welcoming and inclusive, but you know, to speak to this issue specifically, we have to do what we can to protect people that want to be here, that want to raise their families here, just like I do. So I think we need to be a welcoming, inclusive city. I don't know, as a lawyer, even as a lawyer, I don't know the specific legal issues and legal ramifications of this protected status, but I think if it's something the city can look into, we should.
Thank you. Genevieve?
Yes, I concur that we must look at the legal ramifications of declaring ourselves any type of sanctuary city, or again, not entirely sure the parameters of TPS. However, Tempe is diverse and welcoming. Also an issue very close to my heart. I would not be here if it wasn't for a Green Beret soldier who during the Vietnam War rescued my mom, who was the first Vietnamese adopted in the United States after she was wounded and orphaned during the war. And now here I am a generation later running for public office. And so it's a very important issue to me that we be welcoming to people from other countries in the city, that we embrace our diversity. We use that as a strength, and find any policy that we can to be welcoming and to not keep people living in fear, because that is not what we should be doing, is allowing people to live in fear.
Thank you. Our next question, we are concerned with the increase of violent crime along Scottsdale Road, loitering and solicitation late evenings and especially early mornings is a big concern. We need additional police presence at these times. How would you help address this issue? And I'll start with Justin.
And obviously I'm not like at this moment, I'm not privy to those stats or what's going on there. But if there is a resident's concern about what's going on in various corridors within Tempe, I think it'd be wise to sit down and have conversations with the police force and address those concerns in meetings and everything. I do know that a lot of in the northern end above the river, that there's a dividing line there of where there's some worrying about police presence and whatnot. I totally lost where I was going there. I apologize, but I just think there needs to be good communication with council and the police force about issues that are being talked about from the residents. We've seen this now really well with the current council.
Okay. I'm going to go to Robin on this one.
Okay, fantastic. I would say a little bit of the same thing. I mean, whenever I get a resident's concern, I think it's really important to make sure that I listen and understand, and then be able to bring the parties together so then we can address the issue. There are commanders that oversee the different zones in the city of Tempe, and it would be really wise to be able to sit down with them, the people from the neighborhoods, and talk about what those issues are, to come up with some solid strategies for resolution. Now, when it comes to resources for our first responders, for our police officers, I think it's very important that we make sure that they have all the tools and resources that they need so they can do their job to their fullest extent to make sure that they're keeping our community safe. And if there's an issue in regards to the number of personnel that we have in the police department, then that's something that absolutely as a city council we need to address. Because we certainly don't want there to be a shortage. We want to make sure that everybody in their home feels safe and has an outstanding quality of life. And I will tell you that public safety is a large piece of that.
Thank you. Genevieve.
Yes, I would concur that it's a case-by-case basis based on where you are in the city. And it is really important to assess why this is happening first before going in with a police presence and potentially criminalizing poor people. Again, depending on what the issue is, I think we just need to take a really careful look at this. I love the park officer model. I like leading with services as opposed to leading with prison when it comes to loitering, understanding the needs of the individuals that are there. I also think this is something we should look at in collaboration with other municipalities, because one of the things I'm hearing in my neighborhood is that you know, there's a bus that comes and drops off a whole bunch of people all at once, and then they hang around this intersection. Well, apparently there's a clinic there, and they wait between when a shelter closes and when the clinic opens, and so they kind of hang around the neighborhood. So I think this is something that we just need to go have conversations. We can be practical about this without using a heavy police presence in this. We can address the root cause and go from there.
Thank you, Genevieve. Lauren.
So public safety is job number one for a city and for a city council to oversee that. And we have a relatively new police chief, Sylvia Moyer, who's instituted a number of reforms in the police department. And she's conducted implicit bias testing for all police officers and has worked really hard to establish sort of commander level, as you mentioned, Robin, functions so that neighborhoods get used to seeing the same police officers and they can contact a specific police officer when they detect issues. But fundamentally, I think when you identify a problem in a certain geographical area, you need to apply tools called CompStat, where you get together in a regular way. The neighborhood meets with police officers, meets with the higher brass, but also the cops on the beat, so you can look at the problem and assess it and be meeting together week after week after week until you see the problem abate. And this is part about accountability for the police and accountability for the neighbors, because ultimately we need to protect one another.
Thank you. Sarah.
If you're not safe, nothing else matters. So safety has to be the number one thing. It relates to the question we were talking before about refugees coming, escaping, not feeling safe, right? So we have to keep everyone safe. I agree that it has to be kind of a case-by-case basis and communication with the neighborhoods that are going on and what the problem actually is. Because in terms of loitering, I mean, violent crime is one issue, loitering is a separate issue, and I know what we've heard a lot of issues of maybe loitering or hanging out in parks, and a lot of that has to do with individuals experiencing homelessness. And I've talked before about kind of bringing the humanity into that conversation, not just increasing our police force, connecting people with services, whether that's rapid rehousing, mental health care, job training, whatever they might need, so that they get what they need to be successful, and then the neighborhoods feel more safe and secure and happy as well. So I think there's a lot that the city can do to be a part of that conversation. But of course, at the end of the day, we have to support our police and fire, fund them adequately, give them the resources they need to do their job. They put their lives on the line for us.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, as a council priority, health and safety is number one. So we have to make sure that our community feels safe and that they are safe. I'm a very big advocate of the neighborhoods being more involved, empowering the neighborhoods in decision-making processes, and partnering with the police department. I was a captain, neighborhood watch captain for many years in my neighborhood, and we met with the police officers. We had the police officers come out to our neighborhoods and talk about what was happening, give us the current status on the crimes that were happening in the community and what we could do about it, who to watch for. And it was very empowering, and it also built a great relationship with the police department. So I'm a strong advocate of that. Also, small businesses. It's something that I'm promoting, small businesses, because when we get to know our neighbors through small businesses and we can walk down the street and grab a cup of coffee with our neighbors, it promotes safety in the community, because guess what? You know that neighbor, and you know what cars they drive, and if there's a car out there that doesn't belong to them, you know it faster. So we can't just relate or depend on just the police department. We have to depend on our community members.
Thank you. Next question. Okay, how would you address the street infrastructure regarding ADA compliance for seniors and disabled, road improvements for things like cracks in the streets, traffic and safety for bicyclists and pedestrians? And I'll start with Lauren on that one.
Ooh, that's a big one. Yeah, I've knocked on
1 minute.
I've knocked on thousands and thousands of doors and definitely heard this as a concern among our residents. And you've noticed there has been a lot of street work, road work that's been done. We suffered a little bit during the recession with some cutbacks, and we're seeing now a reinvestment in our infrastructure by the city of Tempe. With that, though, comes complaints like traffic is slowing down because you're doing all this infrastructure repair. Well, we need to invest. We need to invest in our infrastructure. Public safety, when you consider transportation issues, is also number one. So we need to make sure that all citizens, whether they're driving, whether they're riding a bike, or whether they're pedestrians, are safe. That's why we've adopted Vision Zero, where we are pledging no more fatalities on the road, on the bike, or walking. That's really important. It's not a vague promise. That's a commitment that all the council members are taking upon themselves as well. We need to asset-based management. We need to assess and triage the most important repairs to make to a system. That's why we go through our whole infrastructure plan and make sure that we're complying with ADA accessibility rules and making sure that we protect the areas that need protection the most.
Thank you, Lauren. Sarah?
This is absolutely such a critical role of the city. Safety is probably first, like I said, and then getting to where you need to go is a close second. So street infrastructure is really important. As a disability rights advocate, making sure our streets and our city in general is accessible to people with disabilities is a top priority. It's something that I think is really important, and I would like to bring that expertise to the council, and always making sure that people with disabilities, and we know that that affects seniors, and most people in their lifetime will experience disability in some way. And so making sure that people with disabilities can get around our city is really a top priority for me. But we know we're a multimodal city. We're a city where people get around by bus and orbit and car and bike and walking. And so we need to make sure that that's all happening smoothly. Lauren mentioned, a lot of these changes are happening now. I think, we're doing a good job for the most part. There are some growing pains as part of that. But again, I'd really love to bring the disability expertise to the council to make sure that the most vulnerable have what they need.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, when I was a public works director, or deputy public works director, stand corrected there, we focused a lot on the infrastructure in the community. And in fact, every 7 years, we had a pavement management program. So what that meant is every 7 years, that street that was in need was touched. Every street was looked at in the city. And out there, we would have then debriefings about what streets we needed to look at first. That program went away when we had major budget cuts in 2010, and I think we really need to get back to the basics. We need to really focus on the basics. Our health and safety should be number one. Also, even our fire hydrants have failed. Our firefighters have gone to fires, and our fire hydrants haven't been working. So that's an important piece of the puzzle with our infrastructure. So we really need to get back to the basics and focus on that. And we also need to improve our ramps for the disabled so they can travel around safely throughout the city.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, I like Lauren's mentioned, we are coming up from recession levels and trying to truly invest back into city's public works, which is great, and we've seen it all around with all the construction and everything. Hopefully, as soon as some of the main thoroughfares are done, we can start seeing neighborhoods being touched, neighborhood roads and sidewalks finally being touched. We hadn't seen it done in a long time, and now it'd be a big priority of mine to make sure that some of this is done, and including making sure we have, with all the CIP projects coming up, the capital improvement projects coming up, with the funding coming back, make sure the parks are better ADA as well, and get that up to standards. When it comes to bicycles were mentioned, I'd really like to make some sort of investment into like innovative thinking for the city of Tempe. Tempe's been forward thinking of bicycling and bicycles since the 70s when they first came up with the bicycling plan. I'd really like to explore some foreign ideas or even some other city ideas, something like a cycle track. And we have really smart people here in Tempe. I think if we just put the money into investment, we can move forward with.
Thank you. Robin?
Thank you, Robin. I would say definitely one of the things that we hear when we're out talking to people is some of the concerns that they have in regards to their streets and their neighborhoods and the main thoroughfares. And we have worked really hard to get to a better position, I will say. Definitely in the past, we may have gotten behind a little bit with some deferred maintenance, but we now have a really good solid plan in place. When it comes to the PQI, what that index is, we're right around 60%, and what we want to be is around 70%. So for us to get to that 70% and really see some improvement in our pavement and our streets, that means we're going to have to be able to give it a shot in the arm and be able to allocate some more resources so we can do that. And I think that we're going to probably see that direction from the council moving forward. When it comes to ADA compliance, we can do better than ADA compliance, and we've been working through that a lot. We've had an initiative to make sure that we are accessible when it comes to our city facilities, when it comes to our city parks. I had a really great working group that got together to make sure that not only could people access the community parks, but everybody would have an opportunity to play on some playground equipment. So a lot of great things are happening, but still a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Genevieve?
Yes, so I'm a big fan of the Vision Zero initiative. I think that's something so critically important for our city. I would also just applaud our Public Works Department as they go through the 1,200 miles of road that we have in the city, rank them on a 7-point scale, and triage them accordingly. So this is happening today. I would concur an additional investment because we did lag during the recession years, and now we're just coming back into it and reinvesting in our infrastructure. You're seeing it. You're seeing the infrastructure happening. Our city staff has done a great job of letting neighborhoods know when their roads will be closed. There's no parking signs on my parents' street right now because their infrastructure is being repaired. And hats off to our firefighters in Tempe, because knowing that there is no system in the world that is fail-proof, the firefighters in Tempe had a process to follow, that if a fire hydrant failed, they had another one to go to. They have 500,000 gallons on their trucks to deal with fires in the event that a fire hydrant fails. And so there's a significant process in place to improve that, and hats off to our city staff today.
Thank you very much. Our next question, changing topics. The residents in South Tempe have recently raised objections to City Council's approved tiered water rates. Please state your own feelings about how these rates may or may not be in Tempe's best interest. And I'll start with Robin.
Awesome. I like to start with one of the most controversial things that we've been talking about in the city of Tempe. So I'm very happy to do that. I will say one of the things that we have been working on is really to try to find a better balance when it comes to water conservation and water efficiency. And so, maybe we don't all agree on the council on this topic, but we got to the point about a year ago where we said, hey, I truly believe that we were making a negative impact of a lot of the residents in South Tempe, and we needed to stop and pause to take a look at what we were doing to make sure that the water rates were cost effective enough or creating that negative impact to so many of our residents, where here we are with all these great initiatives, wanting to create more shade, wanting to reduce the heat islands, but not being able to let our residents be able to do the same thing. So when that happened, we took a pause, we took a look at it. For a year, we supplemented that budget for a year with reserve funding to be able to make sure that we were educating our residents, that they were being efficient as possible. Now that I think that they're doing everything that we can, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're rebating and helping them do the things that they want to do to have the type of yard and landscape that they want and that they deserve.
Thank you, Robin. Sarah?
So this is a controversial topic going on right now. I think one of the things that all of us are hearing is that there are people upset about this issue. And so that's something that is important. We have to listen to the voices in Tempe. A lot of people do feel like they weren't heard adequately, and I think the council has to be responsive to that. And if that means seeking more input or whatever it means, listening now, but certainly listening earlier and more. I think we have to do that to make sure people feel like they're part of the process. But we do know we live in a desert, it's a drought, we live in Arizona. And so because the federal government and state aren't necessarily doing what's necessary, the cities and residents often bear the brunt of those costs. So I think people taking advantage of the programs the city has in order to save money and save their water. And I think the tiered rates, while controversial, may be appropriate in some cases. I think a lot of people just feel like they weren't heard from the beginning. However, my whole thing about putting Tempe families first, I still struggle with the fact that if we're giving big tax breaks to out-of-state developers, do we need to have this tiered system? So I think it's a balance.
Genevieve?
Yes, so we are in a prolonged drought in Arizona, and incentivizing conservation has got to be a priority. We have a choice to do nothing, and certainly we see what's happening in South Africa right now, where they're about to run out of water. So I would much rather make a decision, and I do applaud council for making a very tough decision with the information that you had to do the tiered water rates when you did, as opposed to when it became a problem. We've seen farmers across the country vote to have their own water rates increased so that they can preserve their most sacred resource. And so I think this is something there's no easy solution here, but I would encourage, in my professional life, I do a lot of change management and process improvement, and I have a Six Sigma green belt. So that is one of the things I would really like to work on council, is this stakeholder information and communication process, and finding out, what are all the ways that we can look at incentivizing conservation and how to communicate it better.
Thank you, Genevieve. Jennifer?
Yes, I think the tiered water rate system is too severe as it's currently implemented. We have people in South Tempe cutting down trees. I have one friend, for example, that both sets of neighbors cut down all their trees because they couldn't afford their water bills. So that is counterproductive, obviously. So I think we also had very little communication between the council and the residents of Tempe. Like, for example, like if that person was getting $500 water bills, they should have been communicated with, hey, guess what? If you don't make changes in do zero landscape or zeroscape, I should say, or things like that, you will have $1,000 water bills, which I've canvassed thousands and thousands of homes, and many people have had $1,000 water bills. They are having to think about selling their homes and leaving the city of Tempe as a result.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, this topic's been retreaded and retreaded and retreaded again. It's obviously a very controversial and a hot button topic, but I think it's time to start looking for solutions of where we're at this moment instead of continuing to retread. I think, yeah, we have this goal for this canopy cover that we want to move forward, and we want to keep the character of the neighborhoods that make the neighborhoods important. So what I'm offering as a partial solution on top of all the other rebates that's offered by the city of Tempe is the old growth tree program rebate to help neighbors and those affected by the water rate increase that want to keep their old growth and want to keep their trees, some sort of fiscal incentive to help them offset the tiered water cost. I mean, we can talk over and over again about everything, but it's time to think of like some different solutions, maybe something off the beaten track a little bit. And I really think because of all the successful rebate programs we had in Tempe, the first step would be something like an old growth rebate program where people can keep their yards, keep their neighborhoods nice, and just get a little bit of money to kind of offset the costs and the hurt.
Thank you. Lauren?
Every 2 years, Tempe conducts a water rate study by law, and it's an exhaustive public process over the course of a year. We had dozens of public meetings, we had focus groups, staff went out and individually met with neighbors that were concerned in the large lots in South Tempe. We have an inclining block structure, so does the entire Southwest. And the entire Southwest does. If we didn't, we would have massive infrastructure that we would have to create. So each one of those inclining blocks pays for the cost of service for that block. If you're using over 40,000 gallons, you're bringing higher cost to the system, and you're paying for that part of it that goes over 40,000, a little bit more. But still, our rates are the third cheapest in the valley of 9 cities. We can't go any cheaper. We have an enterprise fund, and we have to cover our costs. So this is a nonpartisan issue. We are facing drought on the Colorado River. We've elected as a region to pay more for cap water, $9 million more. And it costs, we saved $22 million with a net savings of $13 million. Avoided costs with inclining block structures saves 20% to municipalities over the course of the year. So it's really important we continue conserving water.
Thank you. Okay, this next question, we've probably got time for a couple more questions before we go to closing statements. So most of these need a minute answer, so I'm really reluctant to go any less. So this one has to do with bike lanes. Bike lanes have been a sore issue for many commuters in Tempe. It's going to cost $3.5 million to fix. That money is coming from gas tax highway user revenue fund that usually goes for road improvements, bus turnouts, and bus turnouts. How will those improvements get made without those funds? Our roads need work, so it deals with both your bike lanes and roads, and how are we going to pay for both of them? So we'll begin with Sarah on that one.
Right, so bike lanes also another controversial issue. I agree with Justin about looking forward, but also people need to feel heard. That's a big role of a council member, is to listen to the voices in the city. And I think the biggest frustration that I've heard at the door about bike lanes is just people are not happy that we put something in to take something out to put something back in. I think part of that, though, the reason we're putting something back in is because the council heard the voices of the community that wanted something wanted a lane put back in. So we can't punish the council for actually listening. But I think we have to, when you look at the 2040 general plan, bike lanes are a part of what we need in the city. It's a hugely important piece of how people get around. And so it can't be, I just don't think we can have this conversation of pro or anti-bike lane. We need to be pro multimodal transportation. We need to be pro people getting around. It's good for our environment for people to be using bicycles. So I think I would really like to see this conversation kind of reframed, not as pro or anti-bike lane, but as pro everyone in the city of Tempe.
Thank you. Let's go to Jennifer.
Yes, part of what I'm running on is empowering neighborhoods in the decision-making processes. So what that means is before decisions are made, I think we need to reach out to the neighborhoods, whatever neighborhood is affected. Every neighborhood in Tempe is very unique, and we have to be respectful of that. The McClintock bike lane, for example, there wasn't any inclusion as far as what the neighborhoods wanted before that was put in. And only after the fact, when people were very upset about the bike lanes, did city staff and things go out. So the solution to that would be to really reach out to the neighborhoods and empower the neighborhoods and decision-making processes before the city makes the decision. It's really quite simple. And I agree that we need to have all kinds of different transportations as the city grows. And I'm a supporter of bike lanes, but they have to be well thought out, well planned, and well executed.
Lauren.
So the City of Tempe has traffic engineers that take their responsibilities very seriously to create safe roads for pedestrians, for drivers, and bicyclists. The McClintock bike lanes are controversial, but one fact that is not controversial is that there's been a nearly 30% reduction in mid-block crashes with those bike lanes. So it is a public safety feature. As a council member, sometimes these decisions are difficult, but when you think about protecting public safety and saving lives, it's not so difficult. You can incur the wrath of people, but ultimately you have to create a roadway safe for everyone. Now the bike lanes themselves, I think they were sort of a poor man's bike lane. We could have done better, maybe done a track system, used less room. We did listen to people though, and we are returning the third lane going southbound. That's where the observable slowdown was. And we will spend $3 million, but that's not going to impinge on other transportation revenues that we need to spend elsewhere. It's important that we create roadways that are safe because people live, work, and play on McClintock. We need to make sure people are safe.
Thank you. Genevieve?
Yes, well, the decisions on the bike lanes are done, right? So we know they're going to add the lane. We're going to keep the bike lanes. And we need to encourage people to use alternate modes of transportation. Ultimately, that's the best way we're going to get the traffic down in Tempe. So Tempe's done an incredible job of having lots of different transit options. The Orbit is one. My son used the Orbit every day to get to school, and he used it today to get home from school. And so I think it's important that we keep investing in our transit infrastructure. And when it comes to empowering neighborhoods, one of the projects that's coming up is on the Country Club multi-use path. We need to encourage, multimodal transportation and our shade so that it makes it more appealing for people to use these alternate modes of transportation. But we did not see a lot of neighborhood engagement, particularly from the Escalante neighborhood. And that's one where we have to be very mindful that there are communities, neighborhoods in Tempe that don't have a very strong voice. And so we need to be mindful of that. And I've challenged council members to knock on doors in the past to go get feedback where we haven't gotten it before.
Justin?
As I mentioned a few questions ago, we gotta invest a little bit of money into outside the box solutions for biking in the future. There's a whole bunch of different ways we can look at that that's being used in different cities. We have, like I said, great bike resources and great bike people that can help us out with that. Even Mitchell Park is hopefully going to pilot a program here to give some sort of bike education to residents because it's about education, there's a learning curve. But the big elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about what's really going on in McClintock is development. And can our infrastructure really hold the amount of development that we're putting into North Tempe right now and looking in the future in South Tempe? What we're the more and more things that come in, the bigger and bigger buildings come in, more jobs that come in, jobs that are bringing people from Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler. It's not just Tempeans that are coming in, it's everyone that's coming into these buildings that you see coming up. And that's where we have to really question, and be really strategic about the development that we put in, because that's what's really dragging down McClintock. That's what's dragging down rural. That's what's dragging down University. We just gotta be careful about that.
Robin?
Well, first and foremost, I would say yes, 100% I support bike lanes. I was on the Bicycle Advisory Committee back in the early 90s. I hate to admit that. But we worked really hard to advocate to put more bike lanes in the city of Tempe. In the city of Tempe, we have 175 miles of bike lanes that I think have been planned very well. Unfortunately, I can't really say that so much for McClintock. And what we did is we went by the general plan and the 2040 general plan and the transportation master plan that actually called for putting bike lanes on McClintock Road. Unfortunately, after we found the impact of what that had and listening to the residents, that's when we decided to take responsibility for something that obviously wasn't working and our residents didn't want. So that will be reversed, that traffic lane will go back in, the bike lanes will stay, but they'll be non-buffered. So to me, that was a really good compromise to be able to get to a position that not only supports the traffic, but also supports bicyclists in the future. So I think it's really important that we continue with multimodal types of transportation and we encourage our youth to really get involved at a young age too.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question, then we will go to closing statements. We've had a wide range of issues. There's a few more issues here I'm not going to be able to get to, but
Oh, come on.
oh, I know, we could go all night, but they told us we had to be done by 9 tonight. So with that, Northwest Tempe has participated in a character development program. Would you support other neighborhoods having a chance to participate in the same way? And I'll start with Genevieve.
Absolutely, yes. Okay. So I think this is really important for us to be able to have with our character areas, to be able to have good, solid organizations with perhaps rotating leadership and things like that, where people can get together and decide what they want to see in their community. I think this is good for residents, and I think it's good for business to know upfront what those neighborhoods want to see in their communities. Even design standards, what types of building materials you want to see, what types of setbacks do you want to see. I think this is so critical, and I think the city should be the one to facilitate this. And maybe that comes from my perspective as a facilitator, but I think organizing these meetings and coming up with a transparent process for neighborhoods to do this all across Tempe is going to be so important for our growth in the future.
Thank you. Justin?
I've actually been, as the chair of the Mitchell Park Neighborhood Association, I've been deeply involved in the Character Area 3 planning process for, a year now? It's been a long time. And it's extremely important to get all the input that you can get from neighbors, business leaders, small business, and how it's going to work. There's bigger things coming down the line. The urban core plan is coming down the line. That's being talked right now. The consulting firm that's doing that's talking to neighborhood leaders right now and neighborhood groups. And it's really important to make sure that the voices are heard from these neighborhood associations. That's why I'm advocating for a village planning committee, much like Mesa and Phoenix has, so we can make sure we're on the ground floor of any development that comes into our neighborhood and divide up those the village planning committees by the character areas. And so when a developer comes in, they have to pass this committee first before going to the DRC, or at least they can still go to the DRC, but they still have to get like the recommendations and if the village planners approve it, and that goes on the project. So I just think it's really important that we go with this village planning committee idea.
Thank you. Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was part of the council when we decided to implement character areas. There are 8 character areas in the city of Tempe, and it's really been a rewarding process and a great buy-in process, I think, for the residents to really have some say as to what they believe the character of their neighborhood looks like, what they want, what they don't want, and to be able to incorporate. One of the things that I think that we can do better is to make sure as development comes, whatever it may be, whether it's residential or business, that we're incorporating all those tools, all those resources that we have early on in the process. Maybe it's the urban core master plan that we're working on. It could definitely be the character areas, the World Cafe, some of the information that we've gotten from our business survey, for our residential surveys, to make sure that those individuals that want to come and do business in the city of Tempe are aware of the character of the area that they want to do business in. And so to me, this creates a great buy-in, and everybody gets excited about whatever it may be, and we be able to maintain the character of that area. It's so important to get the buy-in from the residents to make sure that we can do that successfully.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, I completely agree with the character development program. Empowering neighborhoods is one of my platforms that I'm running on. So that's key to, I think, the success of our community. And the more inclusion that we have with the neighbors and neighborhoods, the better decisions that we'll make. That's true of any kind of process. When I was a deputy public works director, we would go out frequently to the neighborhoods and meet with concerned neighborhoods and leaders in the community about what their needs were, what their concerns were, and we would develop plans and execute plans to truly improve the neighborhoods. And I think we can do more of that. And we have great staff to do that. We have a great neighborhood outreach team, and I think we can do that through them.
Thank you. Lauren?
So the character area process, I think, has really served to spark neighborhood associations across the city, and people have become more involved in neighborhood associations. I think that's a great result. I think from this plan, and we've been doing it for 2 years, and we're continuing it now and into the future. I think it's important to take the leadership that develops out of the character area plan and have those leaders be involved in helping to shape development within those character areas. That's a really important thing, as Justin was mentioning.
I think if there's anything true about the human experience, it's that people want to feel heard and to be heard. And so I think what's really exciting about city issues is that people really have the opportunity to be heard. And if we've heard anything tonight, it's that some people come and are upset about something, some people come and are excited about something, and I believe strongly it's the role of the council member to hear those voices. So I think character development program is part of that, part of enabling and making neighbors able to help in the development of their actual neighborhood. But I think what's really important is making sure that people who don't usually have a voice have one, who aren't usually heard become heard, and that council members really, as Genevieve mentioned, get out in the community and talk to underserved members of the community that aren't necessarily the squeaky wheels, that don't necessarily come to meetings and write their council members. There are a lot of opinions and voices in the community that aren't getting heard, and I think I would like to be on the council so that I can go and talk to those people and make sure that their input is part of the process and that the council is hearing their opinion as well.
Thank you for all those comments to these wonderful questions that came from our audience. And now it's time to do closing statements from the candidates on whatever they want to say and why they want to represent you. And we will begin with Jennifer. 2 minutes, yes.
First of all, thank you all for coming tonight to this very spirited discussion. I am passionate about the city of Tempe. I worked there for 29 years. And for 14 years, I was in community services as a social worker in community services. I did a lot of community outreach. I taught single parenting workshops, domestic violence prevention workshops. I did youth outreach programs for Tempe high schools. We got to know a lot of the Tempe kids, so we taught them how to apply for jobs. And I also counseled the police and fire. I worked very closely with police and fire. When they went to bad calls, I was their debriefer. And I also was a marriage and family counselor, which is sometimes like being a referee. But I loved it, and it was a great job. And then for 15 years, I was in public works and internal services. In 2009, I began to do research with the 311. And to this day, it's now a successful program and that you can download on your apps. I also helped with streets and solid waste, engineering, light rail construction, facilities, parks and golf courses, fleet operations, and transportation, to name a few. I have a lot of experience in understanding managing city budgets. I ran a $7.5 million operating budget as a facilities manager for the city of Tempe, and up to $5 million in capital improvement projects. When I received the budget in the beginning, it was operating in the red. Within 6 months, I had it operating in the black. I've built great relationships with many departments, many employees, council, and mayors. I am a consensus builder and trained mediator, and I'm going to hit the ground running. I want to empower neighborhoods in the decision-making processes. I want you to have a seat at the table before decisions are made. I want to promote small businesses. They are the heart of the community. I helped my father with businesses growing up, and I recently was endorsed by the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. I want to improve our infrastructure so we have safe drinking water, hydrants that work, and our roads and alleys are safe. A vote for me is an investment in future. Jennifer Adams for Tempe City Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Genevieve.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here, and for those of you who are watching on TV, again, my name is Genevieve Vega. I'm running to be your next council member because I know what it's like to raise a family in Tempe. I have a freshman in high school, and I have a special needs second grader. There's a lot of things we can, you heard that we agreed on a lot of things on this table. So I think it's important for you to know who you're voting for. And so, again, I have two children in public schools that I'm raising. My husband and I are going to celebrate 20th anniversary of our first date this Friday, in case you didn't remember. And so, so family is so important to me. We know what it's like to balance the rising cost of living in Tempe while paying a small mortgage worth of student loan debt. I understand fundamentally the challenges that our working families face in Tempe because I'm one of them. I know what it's like to bootstrap a business because I run my own business and help other businesses grow and succeed, both here locally and across the U.S. So these are some skills that I want to bring to our council to be able to bring stakeholders to the table and come up with a strategic plan to go forward. I want to be on the council because I mentioned before, I have a 6 Sigma green belt, and maybe that's a little nerdy, but process improvement and transparency for efficiency and effectiveness in our city, I think is so important. And that's something I'd really love to tackle while I'm here. And I mentioned before, I'm on the Tempe Community Council. My heart's in the community. I've spent years in Tempe raising funds for our most vulnerable communities. And I mentioned earlier, I'm running because I decided to run after all these years of volunteering because my daughter really went through a struggle in school to find the services she needs. And her differently abled friends want to be included in this city, and they want to be given all the opportunities that the rest of us enjoy. And that's going to be so important for me on the council, is to bring a voice to these underserved communities. Again, Genevieve Vega for Tempe City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
As I mentioned earlier, I am the daughter of a refugee, of an immigrant to this country. My dad came here after the Second World War. Both of his parents were Holocaust survivors. And so I grew up knowing my grandparents, my grandma Lola, my grandpa Moisha, who had survived the Holocaust. My grandmother was in Auschwitz, and that's really hard to know as a young child what that means. What happened? How could this happen? How could my family that I know and love have endured such a horrifying, maybe the most horrifying thing that ever has happened in human history? And so I really struggled with that as a young person, and I came to two main conclusions. One, that awful things happen because some people are very intent on committing awful acts. But these things can only happen if many good people are silent and do nothing. And so I learned from a very early age, don't do nothing. Don't be silent. Speak out. Speak out when you see injustice and stand up for people that need help. And that's why I've committed my life to public service. That's why I went to law school, to become a public service attorney and representing the most vulnerable in our community, people with disabilities, often living in poverty, who really have nowhere else to go. I spend every day listening to the stories of families who need help, listening to parents, listening to children, listening to adults with disabilities and mental illness, to fight for them, to make sure they get what they need in the community. Tempe is my home. I love this city, and I want to bring that aspect of my life that I champion for working families and families in need to the council. I hope you'll consider me for one of your votes. I'd be happy to talk with any of you after or in the coming weeks, and you can check out my website, caterfortempe.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren?
So Tempe is a compassionate city. We put politics aside to create innovations and to make positive change for our community. I'm in my first term as a council member, and it's been my honor to serve as a council member. We have an amazing council that really listens to the community. You know, we can make your life miserable as a city. We can also make your city more livable. And I believe that we work and listen to our residents. And you know, if you meet us at the Costco or at the door, we're always ready to listen and also to innovate. We created an innovation fund to just encourage innovation from the community. We live in the midst of this wonderful university, ASU, and I originally ran to kind of create a bridge between the university and the city. There is so much innovation going on, and there's now been this culture of collaboration with the city and with the university that's really having impact on people's lives. I've been here 30 years, and I'm probably the oldest member on the council, but I'd like to say I'm the youngest in spirit. What do you think, Robin?
Okay, you can have it.
I work to really get stuff done in this community. And fundamentally, though, it's about constituent services. The greatest joys I have on council is when someone comes to me with a problem, and I work with them to create a solution. There's nothing more fulfilling than that. And I believe I have a vision for the city as a more sustainable city. And by sustainability, I'm not talking about just recycling and water and waste and energy. All those things are important, but fundamentally it comes down to social and economic justice. We need to create a city that has more affordable housing. We need a city that, you know, we have a 31% poverty rate. We need to reduce the rate of poverty in our city, and I'm proud of our pre-K program that's doing that. And we need fundamentally to look at all the members of our community and make sure that their needs are being met. We have a lot of challenges ahead, I have no doubt. I am someone with an inquisitive mind, a very critical mind. I work well in the sandbox, though. I respect staff, and I respect all the expertise that they bring. There's not a day that goes by when I'm sitting in my office in the Global Institute of Sustainability where someone doesn't come by with a great idea, and I'm so pleased to try to project those ideas into the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Justin?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and it's been a fun debate. Our forum, I've had fun with all of them so far. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the North Tempe Neighborhood Association for taking the time to put this together and let us come out here and talk a little bit. And hopefully you liked some things you heard. Maybe you didn't like some things you heard, but at least you got to hear some things. I just want to say, like, you know, I've worked for the neighborhoods, being part of the Mitchell Park Neighborhood Association. I've worked with the neighbors. I've talked to the neighbors. I've advocated for the neighbors. I've seen things come into my neighborhoods that I necessarily didn't like, and I tried my best to work with city staff and work with council members to get a really palatable solution for everyone involved. There's been some wins, there's been some losses, but we've tried and we've worked hard, and I want to continue working hard for the neighbors, just like you, just like me, and maybe the neighbor that you know. I did win the 2017 Tempe Neighbor of the Year this year, and because of my hard work and my advocacy that I've done for the neighborhoods. I want to make sure that we protect, preserve, and rehabilitate the neighborhoods that we have right now, and I want to make sure that we work very hard with the neighbors that are here right now. I want to make Tempe for the neighbors, by the neighbors, and it's the people that come out and get involved, and the ones that can speak for the ones that don't necessarily want to get involved. You know, sometimes you have your neighbor that's a little bit shy or doesn't want to come to these meetings or aren't comfortable around people, but they're your friends, and you can hear their inputs and then bring your inputs to another neighbor and form this coalition and bring it up. And, you know, I want to be that voice. I want to be that person that on council in this chamber that understands where that's coming from, because I've been listening to that for the past 5 years, and it's a tight little group that we have, and I've worked with other neighborhoods, and I just want to make sure we have that voice. Please visit justinfortempe.com for more information, and I'll talk to you whenever you have a chance to want to talk to me.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to all of the candidates. Oh, Robin, I'm sorry.
This is what happens when you have the
That's
longest
me.
name.
I'm sorry, Robin.
Yeah.
I apologize.
That's okay, I'll talk
I
fast.
already crossed her off my list. So. Okay, Robin, you get the
All right,
closing
great.
2 minutes.
I will
Thank you.
close quickly. Thank you very much, Robin. Okay, it is. Again, I just want to say thank you to NTNA and the League of Women Voters for putting this together. You guys are always really remarkable and really inclusive in what you're doing in the city of Tempe. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you that came here tonight. Thank you for being here. I know it's almost 9. But I got to tell you, growing up in the city of Tempe was just a really remarkable experience. I mean, it was always instilled to me in such an early age how important it was to make sure that I give back and get involved. And when I was able to serve our country in the United States Army, it really just solidified how important service before self is. And it's been great to be able to utilize my different experiences, my different passions within the community, and really make some positive change here in the city of Tempe. It's been an honor to be the vice mayor. And I want to continue to work on a lot of the successes that we've already had. I mean, some of the things that I'm really proud of in regards to the collaboration and the efforts and the people and the partnerships that we've been able to create our great Veterans Initiative. A Veterans Initiative that we never even had before. Now we have a Veterans Commission, we have a Veterans Court, and we have our very first Veterans Housing Project that's going to open on February 23rd. We're very excited. It's one, and it's unique. It's actually serving veterans and veterans with families. So I am really excited about the council getting behind this initiative and the community being really excited about being able to move forward. And what we've been able to do with our education partners, creating a program called College Connect Tempe, which is a true community collaboration with our universities, our colleges, the county, and the city to really help our students figure out what it is they want to do after high school. And make sure that whatever that pathway is, whether it's college or career, that they find one that fits for them. So those are just some of the things that I've loved to work on, I've been very passionate about, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I want to make sure that I am here to be able to continue on that. So if you have any more questions, go to robinfortempe.com, and I'm happy to answer your questions, and I hope I can earn your vote on March 13th.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you all, and let's give a round of applause to the candidates. We got 2 rounds of applause. Hey, right? Also, I want to thank you, the audience, for some wonderful and terrific questions. It was a great discussion and debate, and if I were to say anything, I think they should expand the council to include all of these wonderful candidates. So with that, just remember the election is coming around the corner. If you've moved, you need to re-register to vote. If you're not registered to vote, please get registered to vote. You can go to servicearizona.com to do that. And mail-in ballots will be mailed out after February 14th. But the most important message as we close tonight is vote. It's very important that you all vote. And to me, voting is people power. People make it happen. And thank you all for coming this evening, and have a safe drive home. Thank you.
Nice job, Robin.
Oh, well.